So there are all these digital health initiatives popping up. I think from the moment that I decided that I was going to try and find a role, and the moment that I started was about 6 weeks.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of Leaving Med. Today's guest is Naomi, who has made the move from working as a doctor to working in digital health tech, and she's going to be telling us a little bit about how it's going and why she made the transition. So just for a little bit of background, what stage were you at kind of when you left working as a doctor?
Yeah, so a bit of background is probably useful because my experience in the NHS is very, very minimal. My dad is from the UK, my mum's from the Netherlands, so I studied medicine in the Netherlands. I then, after school, after university, decided to move to London. So if there's kind of an equivalent role to what medicine is in the UK, I guess it would be an F4 or an SHO. I'm not sure which title is used nowadays, but that would be the equivalent of where I decided to switch.
Okay, so did you do like foundation training in the UK then?
No, so the foundation years are included in the medical training in the Netherlands. So it's a 6-year program, 3 years of a bachelor's, 3 years of a master's. And the last 2 years of the master's are what is the equivalent of the foundation years in the UK.
Okay, so you've been working for a few years as a doctor. So how did it like compare the UK, first of all, the UK to like the Netherlands working as a doctor?
Yeah, so in terms of working as a clinical doctor, I didn't do that in the UK. My partner does. So I have I always say I have some experience because of all of her stories. But the difference, I think, in terms of what it looks like day to day, isn't that different. I think being an SHO, and in the Netherlands you have an equivalent name for that role, is very similar. I do think the way that you then go on to specialist training is a bit different. So it seems to be that in the UK you just do an exam, and some specialties will have an interview, but in the Netherlands almost everything is an interview. There's hardly any exams attached to these things.
Oh, okay, cool. So basically you worked for a couple of years, and then what made you start to think about maybe transitioning to do something else?
Yeah, I think my idea around if I wanted to continue on as a doctor, those questions around that has been around, I think, maybe even from second year of medical school. So I think I might be a little bit different compared to other people who make the transition, that I was, from the beginning, I was kind of questioning if medicine was the complete right fit for me. I really enjoyed thinking about the human body and the contact with patients and all the skills necessary to do it. But I think I really struggled with the lack of creative work. I really enjoyed doing things on the side to make some money. Things like I was a video maker, so I would help companies make videos, and that's how I would have a side income. I really enjoyed DJing at some point, so I was always doing these creative things on the side, and that became harder and harder as I went through medical school and later when I worked as a doctor. And I really missed that. So I think I was always thinking, is this for me, or do I do something else? And if so, what is that? And when I went through my clinical years and the master's phase, so the foundation years, I realized that there are a lot of kind of problems in healthcare that a lot of people run into, but it's really tough to sit down and take some time to think those problems through and to do something about them. So an example from when I was on the neonatology ward is that there was this feeding program for the babies who were on the ward. And every day, about 5 people had to come and sit together around a table and think about this feeding schedule. And they would do everything by hand. They would calculate everything by hand. They would discuss things by hand. And I was thinking, this is probably like some kind of algorithm. It's not anything special. So I requested some time kind of off the ward to think about this and to give them a solution. And they basically said, no, that's not what you're here to do. So you're just going to have to sit next to the doctor the rest of the day and watch him or her do what they're doing. And I think things like that really made me think outside of the box and kind of what else is out there that allows me to think about problems in healthcare a bit more instead of being in the day-to-day work.
Yeah, the lack of efficiencies in the NHS, especially, really boil my blood. And you try and make positive changes, but you're on the job for such a short amount of time, and nothing ever really changes. Ugh, it's frustrating. So I guess in some ways you have more of an impact outside of working as a doctor, isn't it? Than on the front lines.
Yeah.
So, kind of, you're working in health tech, I understand.
Yeah.
I don't really know what that means or what that is. If you could just explain a little bit about what it means.
Yeah, of course. I've only just started. I think this is going into my 4th month of working in digital health tech. From what I understand, it is just a broad term for many different things. So it kind of encompasses the knowledge, but also technology that is used to help something in healthcare, to either service people or to medical devices is also part of digital health tech. So it's a really, really broad term of anything that you can think of that requires technology to drive things in healthcare. In my case, what that means is that I work for a company that has a software as a service, so to speak. So they offer companies and businesses tech to use for their healthcare purposes. Digital health tech doesn't really have like one definition. I think it's everything that falls under the umbrella term of technology in healthcare.
Okay, and what were the first sort of steps that you took to start that transition then? Did you know people in the field, or what were you doing to try and make the change?
Yeah, I think my idea to try and really pursue something in digital health was quite recent. I think from the moment that I decided that I was going to try and find a role, and the moment that I started was about 6 weeks. So I was very lucky in that respect as well. I think when I was still working in the Netherlands as a doctor, I was already planning to move to the UK, and I was also planning to take some time out of medicine to think about how I can build skills outside of my medical skills. So I wanted to learn some businessy skills and start a small business to kind of learn things outside of medicine and then apply that to what I then thought was going to be a startup. I wanted to start my own startup to solve an issue in healthcare. But then I moved to the UK, continued my a small business. That went well, but I really wanted to kind of deepen the knowledge that I was learning. I didn't want to just figure stuff out myself. I wanted to learn from people who are doing stuff in healthcare in a startup so I could learn how to emulate that. And that's when I figured out that healthcare, digital health tech is quite big in the UK compared to the Netherlands, because the NHS is showing some signs of the fact that it's difficult to service everyone who needs healthcare. So there are all these digital health initiatives popping up and trying to fill certain voids. And how I then got started is that I first looked on LinkedIn. I was just really kind of trying to get a lay of the land of different companies, different people, ex-doctors perhaps, who are now working in a company, and seeing what they were posting, seeing what their business was doing, messaging some people. I then also found a few people on Reddit who spoke about having left the NHS for digital health tech. And I had someone kind of in my network, not really, someone who I'd known 4 years prior to me then reaching out to them, who had sold an app. So they'd created an app, pregnancy app, and sold it to a bigger company. So I was kind of just trying to talk to people and figure out if this was something that I actually wanted to do, because that, I think, was my first question. Is this actually something I want to do? or am I just kind of thinking the grass is greener on the other side?
Yeah, so sort of a lot of sliding into people's DMs and messaging people and trying to find out what it entails. Did you have any sort of skills already? Like, did you already know how to code, or like what? Because going from no experience to a job in 6 weeks sounds quite rapid, especially with the current job market.
Yeah.
So surely you had some sort of advantage. I don't know.
Yeah, I think, first of all, I don't think you need to code. I did try learning to code and realize it wasn't really for me. So it's definitely not, if other people are considering moving into digital health tech, it's really not necessary. I think if you are a clinician, that is your strength and that is your skill set. I think what's way more important, and I think this goes for the wider kind of world outside of medicine or law, where you know what your job is going to be and you know that everyone needs to have the same specialized skill set. I think outside of that, it's way more normal to just see, are you a fit for the company as a person? What things interest you? How do you enjoy thinking about problems? Do you like taking risks, or are you good with people? I think those things are way more important if I now think back to the people I spoke to before I got this job. They're way more interested in, oh, you're a doctor, that's really good, because then, you have a certain expertise and it does signal that you can work under stress, that you can prioritize well, stuff like that. But outside of that, it's really about who you are and what soft skills perhaps as well you have. In my case, I did start a small business in between quitting medicine for a bit and then starting my health tech job. I do feel like in that period I got a really wide range of skills that helped me in the job seeking process. But I don't think it is strictly necessary if you're looking to get into that field.
Okay. What type of business did you start?
So I knew a few people who were in e-commerce, so using social media to sell products or services.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking for something really low risk. So I didn't want to put a lot of money up front, and I didn't want to do something that was starting anything from scratch. So in the end, it's a bit unconventional, but in the end, I started a sex toy company.
Okay.
So I would build a social media presence for that, and I had my own products that I got my own packaging for, and I was shipping those out, and just learning about that whole process of like setting up a business case, selling, customer service, how do you signal what your brand is, like stuff like that.
That's cool. That's really cool. Okay, so what does the day-to-day look like now in your role?
Yeah. It's very, I would say, corporate. That's probably a good word to explain it. It's 9 to 5. I work full time, 5 days a week. Because it is a career change for me, I do a bit more than 9 to 5 hours. But compared to work as a doctor, it's nowhere near the amount of overtime that you would do as a doctor. There are some things outside of work, like networking events or like work-related events that I go to as well. But in terms of the actual day-to-day work, I'm an account manager. So my company works with different brands, different clients, and I help service those clients correctly. So if a client uses the software that my company has created, then I will make sure to be in contact with these clients, make sure that they can market the software well, that they know that they're compliant, medically speaking. So my days are kind of spent servicing these different clients. And it can be anything from creating marketing campaigns to reporting to strategic business strategy, helping them look towards the future and see what they can do to maximize the product that we offer.
So a lot of Zoom calls with clients then? Or...
Yeah, I think right now I spend 2 days with different clients as well. So I spend
Okay.
2 days not working from home, 3 days working from home. In terms of Zoom calls, luckily in my case, it's not that bad. I
Yeah.
think I really prefer working face to face with clients as well. But yeah, it is very yeah, very corporate. So I sit behind my computer a lot, talk to people a lot. So yeah.
Nice. And how does it sort of compare, if you don't mind me asking, kind of pay wise
Yeah.
compared to working as a doctor?
Yeah, so currently I started on the grade that would be equivalent to the average of a CCT salary. So I am working at a startup that is looking to go into their second round of fundraising. So I wouldn't say that my situation is very typical again because I also chose this role to really learn instead of maximizing for income. So depending on which company you join, but also where you join on their journey, the pay can be very different. So right now it's the equivalent of the average of a CCT income, but in terms of progression, you can go basically anywhere, I think. Again, this is very different from medicine where I'm stepping in here in year one of CCT and I'm going to end up there. In the corporate world, it's way more variable. It depends on where you start, where you want to go as well. Because, for example, I'm an account manager, but you could also be a designer, you could be a product manager, you could be a clinical advisor. So, between those roles, there's a huge variation in pay. And some people, I've read stories of doctors who then end up in a senior position in a company, and that can be very lucrative. So it really depends on where you want to go.
Yeah. I imagine it's very variable depending on the company and what stage they're at. Is it still a goal of yours to start your own startup once you've kind of gained experience and things?
Yeah, I'm still trying to debate that. I think I'm really in the thick of like changing careers, and that is so demanding because it's a
Yeah.
different skill set that at the moment that is all I'm thinking about. But yeah, I think that's really the aim for me to see kind of behind the scenes of what a startup is,
Mm.
and learning from everyone who's been doing it for a longer amount of time. So I would say if I start a startup in the next 5 years, I'd be very surprised. But
Yeah.
yeah, ultimately, kind of shaping the future of healthcare is the idea that I went into this with. So yeah.
Yeah, I imagine there's a lot to learn, and you're 4 months into this role, so I imagine the learning curve's quite steep. Um, so, do you miss medicine? Do you miss working as a doctor?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the answer is yes and no. So, my partner is trying to get into specialty training, into
Mm.
psychiatry, and sometimes I look at her and I really do not envy her position because, it's a huge amount of sacrifice. The autonomy is quite limited, so there's a lot that is kind of decided for you. We might have to just move to the different part of England in a few months because she could be placed in a certain place. So from those kind of work-life balance side, no, I don't miss medicine at all. But I do think the things that I really enjoyed about medicine, so talking to patients, thinking really in an analytical way about healthcare problems, just for the individual that's sitting across from you. I do miss that. I do feel though that the way I think about problems in my current role is quite similar. It's just not clinical medicine. But yeah, the talking to patients I think is the impact that you can sometimes have by having a conversation with someone. That I really do miss. Yeah, yeah.
Mm. Yeah. So, for someone who is working as a doctor, say in the NHS, say they can't get into the specialty that they like, they're really struggling, what would you say to them about thinking about exploring other career paths? Any advice?
Yeah, I think everyone's path is different, but I could share a few things that really were helpful for me. The most recent piece of advice I got when I tried to transition into digital health tech, and I think this goes for any change, is that someone told me like you shouldn't run from something, you should run towards something. So I think before I made this change, I was really mentally busy with like this idea of like I don't want to do this anymore, and all the ways in which I didn't want to do work as a doctor, instead of what do I want, because that is what is going to get you into motion to go to the next thing. If it is that, maybe you'll think like I would like to do a clinical advisory role in digital health tech, for example. It sounds interesting, and then you start talking to people who do that, and then the day-to-day work seems a bit not really your thing. Then at least you know that that is not for you. But if you kind of stay stuck into this idea of like the NHS isn't what I thought it was going to be, my work-life balance isn't what I want, then you won't think of all the other possibilities. And so my second piece of advice would be to talk to a lot of people who are doing something else, or who are in a position where you would like to be, because then you can really suss out what it is that they're doing day to day and if that fits you. And a lot of people are very happy to talk about themselves in that respect. So don't be afraid to reach out to people. I've reached out on a few people on LinkedIn, doctors who made the switch. And I've spoken to 4 within 1 week because they were really happy to jump on a Zoom call with me, because I said, look, I'm considering this. Would you mind like talking me through how you did it and what it's like for you? Everyone was really happy to do that.
That's really good advice. I mean, it just seems like so different to like working as doctor. Like the whole like corporate thing, it seems like such a mystery when you compare it to just like treating patients and speaking to families and things like that. Having
Yeah.
to be like all professional and talk to clients and things.
It is, yeah. In a way it is, but it also isn't. I remember, when you maybe it's this in the foundation years when you're in the UK, that you go from one specialty to the next, and you really, if you've never been on a gynecology ward and they just sit you down and they're like, go see these patients. I felt the same. I was like, oh my gosh, I just came from surgery. Like, this is different. Well, I guess surgery is part of gynecology, but, the problems that you think about are different between specialties as well. So it's not that different. And in terms of like being a professional, for example, I really felt that as a doctor, you had to exude this confidence and this kind of, just like nothing ever really touches you. You're kind of like aloof, and and now when I'm talking to clients, I can be a bit more silly and no one really cares. So in some ways it's very different, but also the skills and the things you do day to day are quite similar.
Cool. Amazing.
Is it something you would consider a career change?
I mean, I've been thinking about a career change since like 4th year of medical school. I still get emails from like plumbing schools and graphic design courses and various things that I've inquired about over the years. And I think I felt so like helpless during like foundation years, because I was like, oh, what am I going to do? And I didn't quite have the mental bandwidth to like properly research other careers. And now I've kind of come up with my plan, which is to GP CCT and then move to Canada.
Nice.
So I think, and once you've figured out your path, you can sort of stick with it and be like, okay, I'm just going to get my head down and push through. But yeah, I think I felt quite helpless for a few years. And I think But I think also deleting Instagram has helped me feel a little bit better about my life.
Nice. Yeah, I think we can all do without social media in order to feel better about ourselves.
But yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to come on and be questioned. It's been
No
really
worries.
interesting. Obviously, you've got a lot of hustle to start a few things at uni and then start your own business and go out and venture into digital health tech. I think as doctors, a lot of us do have that hustle because we got into med school, we've survived the first couple years as a doctor. So I
Yeah.
think we all do have that in us,
Yeah.
but we often are using a lot of our energy in the day to day. And I feel like once I've reduced my hours to like 80%, now it means that I can, have energy to do other projects like starting this podcast and things like that.
Right, right. Yeah, and it is. I think you're really right in what you say. You say that the skills that you grow as a doctor are very useful in a wider context. So I do, and I think a lot of people sense this when you get further into training, or maybe you're an SHO for a few years. You really get used to this idea that there's this set trajectory for you, and if you want, you just have to get like on the conveyor belt, kind of. It's not that easy, but when you're on it, you know where you're going. But there are a lot of, I think, causes out there that could really benefit from the skills that we have as a doctor. So yeah, if there's anything in you that is kind of questioning like what would that be like, I would just say, keep an open mind and stay curious and read into things, because yeah, we have the skill set. It's just a matter of applying it if you want.
Yeah, amazing. That's a great place to end. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you.